So here we are, sharing secrets of the soil with me, your host, Regen Ray. Hello, soil lovers, Regen Ray here, and welcome to another episode of Secrets of the Soil. Today, I am joined by someone who is making big waves in the ag space from a technology point of view. I'm joined by Will from Agwe. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Ray, how are you?
I'm good. I'm very excited to unpack what you've been working on because this is something that's been near and dear to my heart, bridging the conversation from consumers and farmers. So share with the soil lovers a little bit about what you're working on and what Agwe does.
Yeah, so at Agwe, we are really trying to help farmers sort of with their branding and marketing, especially online, and trying to help them, I guess, share, their stories, put it into like a digital form that's nice and simple for a consumer to sort of understand and get at. And then we basically use QR codes on produce packaging in stores and everything like that to put it right in front of the customer. So with one scan, they get all that information and can just make better purchasing decisions and really start to, I guess, bridge that gap between farmland and urban sort of consumers.
Yeah, I love that. For many years, I've been saying we need to bring, QR codes onto packaging and where, consumers can meet the farmer in the aisle. And so when I saw your brand working on that, it was like, finally someone who's working on, this idea that's been tinkering in my head. And I think, 2019, most people didn't know what QR codes are, but fast forward, we're using them in everyday part of our lives. And I've started seeing them pop up on wines and, some of the more bespoke and, the things that have story behind them. But what kind of stories are you wanting to capture with the farmers that you're working with? What do you think really hits home for consumers in the aisle?
Well, I think it's really broad. There's a lot of different types of consumers. So I think if you're a farmer, it's about, looking at your sort of story and kind of finding what's really important to you and then just focusing on that. And there's enough consumers out there that what you are really passionate about and what you're working on, it's probably going to translate over to a section of consumers. And then it's just about, basically finding where they're at, putting it there. And you're going to have a group of, you're going to start to build that really loyal customer base that just wants to buy from your farm. So yeah, that's kind of, I don't think it's one thing or the other. I think there's so many things. And yeah, it's really just down to the farmer thinking about like, what is my story and what am I passionate about and what am I working on, and then getting that out there.
And so is Agwe working with the farmers to capture that story and narrate it and maybe storyboard it and then record it, produce it? Like what parts of that puzzle are you working with under the Agwe brand?
Yeah, so at the moment we do work really closely with the farmers that are on our platform and everything like that, because we know it's a new space. Also with farmers, they're busy farming. They're not in urban communities. They're spending most of their time on the farm. Some of them haven't necessarily been into a capital city recently or anything like that. And they don't know the conversations that are happening in these capital cities. So we like to work with the farmers and actually sort of give our perspective, because there's so much stuff that they're going to tell us about, and we'll pick up on the key points and help reiterate back to them. Like, maybe these are, from what you're saying, these are probably the 2-3 things that are really important to you and make your brand sort of unique. And how do we start to now focus on that and tell that story to consumers, and then looking at ways of like, where does it, which business would love to have this story, and starting to sort of help them with that process. Yeah.
And also like doing all the camera work and like, setting all that. Cause I know like most farmers don't want to turn their phone on and record themselves in the paddocks, even though they probably should, but, capturing those, moments on the paddock, the sunsets, all those are really nice ways of sharing how beautiful a farm is. So your crew will rock up and like it's kind of done for you service?
Yeah. So we definitely have we have basically a plan where it's our premium plan where we will actually come out to the farm, we'll sit down, we'll go through the whole day, and we'll take the photos for you. And yeah, my business partner, Mike, he's been in this sort of agricultural marketing space for 5-10 years now, very specifically dealing with farmers. So he knows how to take the right shots and all that sort of stuff. So we do a bit of an education with our farmers as well on how to capture those shots. What shots are we really looking for? Because again, in this sort of new age world, everything's really short. You can't take 25 photos and expect people to scroll through that. It's 5 to 10, 15 at max. And that's really like, so it's how do you tell as much of your story in 5 shots, in 10 shots, and educating them on how to take those photos and get that out there, that it's meaningful, that you've got 5 to 10 meaningful shots, not just, of the same thing.
Yeah. Agreed. I think that's quality over quantity. Sometimes people just do the 1 hour video or the 400 photos, and it's like you never get around to looking at all those. But if you've got 3, 4, 5 amazing shots that just capture the authenticity of how the farm operates and the journey, then most people will kind of fall in love with that. Kind of early days Instagram is why a lot of people got onto Instagram, is because they were feeling like they could live someone else's life through a device, and we need to transport people from a shopping aisle or from at home research on a computer and make them feel like they're actually on the farm. What led you to set up this kind of business? Like, was there, when did that aha moment happen where you're like, this is a business we need to get off the ground?
So it was like, it wasn't something that I was always thinking about or something like that. I basically, like, it sort of was just part of the journey, I think, for me, where I started, studying agricultural economics at Sydney Uni, learned a bit about just the general sort of, I guess, conventional way of farming. That's what I was really taught. And then I wanted to sort of go out into the country and work in regional and remote areas. And out there, I kind of really started to get involved with hearing about farmers' stories, learning about sort of where they've come from. And you just start to become a lot more connected with, like, where your food comes from when you're in these places, because you'll be in a line and someone will say, like, oh, that's from the Mitchell's farm or something like that.
Yeah. And
I just love that part. I love that community feel. I love that you could tell that it's local, that everyone's supporting everyone. And it was something that I found out there that I really connected with. And then I eventually ended up moving back into the city. And as soon as I did, it was just like a light switch. It just turned back off. And it's like all of that information that you get out in the country, it was just gone. And now all I have is a bunch of businesses telling me that they're sustainably sourcing, but they're not telling me from who, and they're not giving me anything tangible. And I thought, well, I still want to be connected with all of these things that I was connected with. So, pull all that together. You've got Mike as well there as well, who's in this storytelling, branding sort of space. And the two of us just kind of, we're like, this is something that needs to be worked out. And again, it's a consumer problem. Like, this is my problem as a consumer. I don't know where my food's coming from. I have every business telling me that they're sourcing from the best farm, and I know that it can't be possible. Yeah. So, it was me trying to solve this problem for myself, but at the same time, it solves a huge problem for farmers that they just can't get the value back to their farm, and they're struggling with that. So yeah, kind of works out for everyone. I want to support the right sort of farmers, and farmers want to tell their story and make sure that, everything that's being pushed on is kosher.
Yeah, agreed so much. And I think that point in regards to it is a grassroots and a ground up kind of movement where, farmers don't necessarily go and buy their produce because they're growing it themselves. So the questions that consumers have, and, we use the word consumer because that's what happens in marketing. Some people like to be called foodies or buyers, but at the end of the day, we are consuming stuff. And if you're consuming more than you're producing, farmers are producers because they're producing. So in that equation, consumers, I like to say, are now becoming more conscious consumers. They're making better decisions. They're asking better questions. They're going to restaurants that are sourcing, better quality foods, where they ask the staff, do you know where this steak comes from? And they're like, yeah, it's Will and Mary's farm from, 120 kilometers away. And like, there is that story attached to it. And I think people are now starting to ask that in the aisle or on the packaging, and the years of greenwashing where everyone's the biggest, the best, the greatest, all that just is ignored now. And I do worry sometimes about packages getting overpopulated with badges and stars and scores and certifications and verifications. And what I like about the QR code is that it's dynamic. It can change, it can be updated, it can be live data, and people can see that. So what's your concerns, or what's your thoughts, I guess, on packages having 400 badges and emblems and stars on them? And like, what are your thoughts on that kind of topic?
Yeah, I think, look, it becomes overwhelming for consumers. And it's like, who are these people? A lot of the time. And, a badge with a tick, although great, sometimes doesn't instill the trust in me that it probably should. Like, there's so many different things out there, the health food star thing that makes no sense. Like, there's all these things that sort of are out there at the moment that don't really help your cause. So having sort of one, like, with our profiles, you can have 5 different, certifications all on your profile. So when you scan in, you can actually see all the different certifications that this farm potentially could have. So it's much less real estate on the produce packaging. And I think at the end of the day, like, photos of the farm build trust.
Mm-hmm.
If I can see the farm, if I can see you as the farmer, like, that's better than a tick any day of the week. If I can see that the paddock that, your sheep, cow, whatever is coming from is green, luscious, the animals look well looked after, cared for, and then I get to read a story and it's confirming all those things, and you're speaking the right language, like, that's where trust is built from with people. And I don't think it's necessarily built from like a tick on a box or 5 ticks on a box or 6 ticks on a box. Like, just show me a photo, show me where it's from, and I can start there.
Yeah. And especially the farmers that are like walking the walk, conventional farmers tend to not have like an open gate policy. Like, you can't just go and visit the farm. They don't run farm tours. They say, oh, it's a biosecurity risk. And maybe it is, because their ecosystem is so depleted that, the wrong type of bug could cause a collapse in their produce and so forth. But the flip side of that is, people who go down to this like organic, or beyond organics, or regenerative, where they're like, gates open, come and see what I'm doing. Like, I have nothing to hide. Go look in the shed. There's no, barrels with skull and bone symbols on it. And if it is, our product's tested and all those residues have left the product because we're so biologically stable, and you can just see it and feel it, and the vibration and the smells and the nature sounds, it's all there. And it's that open door policy. And what your product does is gives that gateway of people to see that, but from afar, where you don't have to travel to the farm gate physically. You kind of go in like on a virtual tour. Has the farmers' uptake been really responsive to that kind of take a peek into my farm with nothing to hide approach?
Yeah, I think so. Like, there's obviously some skepticism. Like, there's obviously a bit of, fear around putting yourself out there and putting yourself online. And I think, farming in itself is kind of, you've got your own little country. You kind of like live, you own, you operate, and it's kind of your space. And kind of coming out of that and going like, here I am, here's what I do, and everything like that, it can be a bit sort of startling at times. But I think now everything's kind of online. People are getting a bit used to it. As more people sort of put themselves out there and tell the world what they're doing and show themselves, it's going to get easy. Every time it gets easier for the next guy. So yeah, I think the uptake's only going to grow. The demand's there from consumers. They're sitting there going like, give me this, please give me the information.
Yeah.
Even the businesses are there going sort of, I want the information. I think, and this is where I can see the problem is like, it's incredibly hard for the farmer to actually give, it's well and good to say, give me the information, but then you look at the tools that the farmer has to give them the information, and it's not easy, and it's not set up for them. And you kind of have to use a different platform and convert it. Yeah, it's just not. it's not smooth. So that's what we're trying to like really do and make it much easier specifically for farmers and just, work on that.
Yeah, awesome. So when I'm a consumer and I scan the QR code, what's some of the information that I'm going to be able to see once I scan the code? What kind of information are you conveying through that portal?
Yeah. So straight away, first thing that you see is a hero shot. And what we love is we want to see the face of the farmer or the family or anything in the field, because that to me just instantly builds trust. So I love seeing that. That's the first thing that I want to see. Then you've got the name of the farmer. Then you scroll down, you've got a description. So they start to talk about, a little bit about their history, a little bit about what they're doing in regards to the environment and whatever sort of their unique points are. And then you can get some information on the types of produce that they're selling. And then we have our sort of agri verification, where we really just want to list out kind of what farmers are doing on their farm. We definitely don't want to be one of those certifications that tell farmers how to farm. We just kind of want to be like, this is what this farm's doing. So are they using herbicides? Are they using fungicides? Are they using insecticides? And just simply listing that out and going like, this is how this farmer is farming, giving that to the consumer, and then trusting that they can make the right decision with that information. Because I think sometimes people in this sort of space dumb down the consumer too much, and they don't just give them the information and go make up your own mind.
Sure. Yep.
They try to like go like, oh, well, I've created this perfect thing that you need. And I think that doesn't work with consumers so much. If you just give them the information, say, this is how we're farming, it's open and transparent, make your choice from here.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of, it respects the consumer and it's easy for the farmer. They can farm however they want, and it's just all transparent and open.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point there, because I think, even like we made a joke before about the star rating, like we don't really know what that means. Like what's being looked at, what's in, what's out, what pushes the stars up, what pushes the stars down. There is no ability for me as a consumer to be better and be more consciously aware of what those ratings mean. So I think you make a really valid point that you just kind of lay the cards on the table and say, these are all the practices, these are all the methods, these are our last tests, these are the badges we've got, we've won this award, here's our video, here's our photos. And then you got you then decide. And then I think this is where the curiosity comes from, because you go onto a profile and you go, oh, I want to know more about what this vegetarian award is. And you can click on it and read more about that. And so the consumer becomes more educated and then goes, I didn't even know that award existed. And we collecting more knowledge as we go down, and we can then look for more of those who else won these awards, and I think that's a really good way of then self-educating and self-selecting. Was that the intention of people being able to then drill down and go deeper and deeper into the tags and the awards?
Yeah, definitely. I think, again, the more, I think, if you kind of lump it into one thing, it's too complicated and you're trying to say so many different things, where we wanted, like any business would do, you just sort of being transparent. So let's take the vegetarian farm award, for example. So we know that there's a consumer group out there that are vegetarians, and they generally believe in a certain sort of basically like just basic things, so they probably don't want to support the livestock industry, but they're happy to buy animal products, and it's just a way of farmers who are in that situation, who aren't producing meat. They may do some animal products like eggs or milk or honey or whatever, and it's just saying like, this is sort of what you are doing. Let's tag you with this, because it instantly sort of puts you with this group of consumers who may prefer to buy from your farm over someone else's. And it's just aligning apples with apples and putting things together so that it makes it easier for vegetarians in the city to be able to find farms that might suit them better, and basically just working at it like that. So again, that's the benefit of just being transparent and open. You'll find all these niche groups that, your farm just instantly connects with. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's so great. I've just been playing around with the website, and I love the fact that, like, for instance, there's a tag there called no till. And most people as consumers would go, I have no idea what that means, and then you click on it and it says how to become a no-till farmer. What is tilling in farming? The environmental impacts of tilling. So not only am I like seeing these kind of layers and levels of, values, I guess, and value alignment, you're actually able to learn more and kind of come away from the website experience with knowledge that you can kind of went, oh, I didn't even know tilling was a thing. And in the ag space, farmers are talking about tilling all the time. We get it. And so from a system developed by farmers, it would just be like, put a tick on there that says we do no tilling. But then from a consumer point of view, that means absolutely nothing, and your website bridges that gap to go, wow, I've left here learning more. And now I know what like tilling's all about simply by just clicking the tag no till and, drilling down. So I think that's a really good, a good user experience in my opinion. So.
Yeah, no, and appreciate you saying that, because I think, that's one of the things. Like, I think as a farmer, it's sometimes really hard to know what a consumer knows and what they don't know, especially if you've just been brought up living in a farm, because, some things to farmers are just so instinctual and so baseline. Like, I learned this when I was 2. But they don't understand that a consumer's never learned this, that they have no idea what you're talking about. And you really have to step it back to the basics of like, what is tilling? Why would a farmer even till in the first place? What's the benefit of not actually tilling, and really breaking it down, and all these things that a farmer would just not even think about saying. For a consumer, it's so obvious to us that we would have to explain what no-till means to just our friend at a pub. So it's kind of going through that process and educating them at the same time as having these tags. Like, why are these tags actually there and what do they mean?
Yeah, I love that. I always think of this quote where it's like, your ordinary is other people's extraordinary. And it's like, because we know it, we think, oh, that's common sense. You just buy a domain name, you get some hosting, you set up a website, and then someone looks at you do that. They go, wow, how did you do that? Or an artist gets some paint and, does some strokes, and they think, oh yeah, I'm just doing a basic face outline. And someone who's not an artist is like, how did you draw a face so simple, using a couple of strokes? And our ordinary is other people's extraordinary. So I always love that kind of quote. I'm very intrigued about the tag, the sponge, and I'm going to cover a little bit more about that after this quick ad break. So soil lovers, stick with us. Hey there, soil lovers. Did you know that there is now a digital agency that is committed and dedicated to soil caring businesses? Maybe it's you, or maybe you know someone who's really looking after our soils and they need to reach more customers. Well, finally, there is a marketing agency dedicated to soil caring businesses. They are soilconnect.com.au. In fact, it's one of my own businesses. I saw a need in the marketplace for a company that was good at marketing and digital, but also loved soil. Well, connecting those two interests together, I got Soil Connect. So head on over to the website and see what services we can help you with in order to amplify your soil caring activities. All right, enough from me. Back to the show. Welcome back, soil lovers. You're hanging out with Regen Ray and Will from Agwe. Before the break, we were talking about this tag that they're called the sponge. Will, is this an Agwe kind of brand? I love the idea of it. Yeah, but is it a common word in the industry? Because I've never seen it before.
No, not at all. So we're still going through some, basically testing, but I thought this one would be fun. And it kind of, again, just coming from a consumer's world, like we put it in sort of our soil category. So what the sponge represents is a farm's ability to actually soak in like water. So when a rain event happens, how quickly does that water sort of infiltrate into the land? And what we do when we're with our farmers is we go around their farm, do a bunch of soil water infiltration tests to see like how is it seeping into the land, and measuring that and reporting on that. And the idea of the sponge, again, is to try and help a consumer who has absolutely no idea that soil is even important start to visualize in their head like what does a sponge do? A sponge soaks up water. What does soil meant to do? soak up water. So the idea is to try and help consumers visualize what's happening in their head by just some of these terms that we're using. So yeah, that's the idea behind the sponge.
No, I love it. It got my attention and I thought I have to bring it up because this, water infiltration, I understand it because I'm in the space, but again, it's not converted to understood information. Water capacity and, so many words are in buzzwords in this space. And in the industry, we kind of get a carrying capacity, but the sponge just made so much sense. And, the ability, you got a benchmark here where it's like it must be able to soak in 1 inch of water under 5 minutes, and if that's true, that means that the soils are absorbing good amounts of water in a rain event. And obviously in a rain event, we want to soak up as much as we can. And the sponge is just a great analogy, I guess, where people get it. You don't have to work out how a sponge works. People know that they use a sponge when they got to mop something up and soak up water. So I think these little clever things that you're doing on the website are going to really help bridge that, educational process and make learning things about soil fun, because water infiltration and holding capacity, it's a little bit boring, consumers don't care about that, So I think you need a little animation or a little icon that looks like a little fun, like a sponge with hands. That'd be
yeah, definitely.
What other badge do you have that's your favorite, or is the sponge the one?
I do like the sponge. I do also, which ones are my favorites? I don't know. I got I kind of, they all have their own sort of part.
What's another one that you can share?
I like sort of off-grid, which I think, again, is just some things don't always necessarily need to be about, I guess, regenerative farming and building soil health. There's other parts to your farm that definitely add value that you just may not be thinking of straight away. So if you have solar and the majority of your energy is coming from solar, consumers really like that. And they're definitely willing to support farmers who are heading in that direction and doing that. So off-grid's essentially an award where, or an achievement where you are basically producing more energy for the grid than you're actually taking out of the grid. So you're a net sort of exporter as a farm. And I think as a consumer, again, something that I would love to be able to support farmers for. So if they're installing solar and the majority of it's coming from that sort of energy source, it's just one more thing that can make me go, yeah, I would love to support you. And I think there's so many things about farming that have this untapped potential that allow consumers to it's just an extra reason to support you. It's just small things that add together that really sort of make me go nah, now I have to buy from you and I'm only going to buy from you. And if you've got that as a farmer, that's an incredibly powerful thing to have.
Absolutely. In marketing, we always say people buy people, not products, And so when you're building that relationship, and it's really about value alignment, talking about being off grid and sourcing, your power and your water sustainably or naturally, supporting, maybe some tiny houses on your farm, all that helps you build value alignment to go, well, that's the dream life that I want. And this farmer is helping other people get that. I want my money and my profits to go down that stream and support that type of, farming enterprise. So I think value alignment and using these little clever tags really helps, tell that story and build rapport with people even from very far away, So.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, being open, being transparent, showing all the good things about your farms. And even some of I think one of the things is that this process that farmers seem to be on, this regenerative process, is not like a one day you're regenerative sort of thing. It's a journey. Yeah. And I think we as a whole industry need to really communicate that message to consumers, that it's not this farm's sustainable and this farm's not. It's they're all in a journey. And if you can take your consumers or your customer base on that journey of you improving your land, of you doing all these things, that's an incredible thing. To everyone, that this is a journey. It's not a one day, oh, I just changed my practices and look at me, I'm regenerative, or I'm sustainable, or I'm this. I think that's a bad way to frame it. And it's also disingenuous to consumers in actually what's happening. And I think it's about showing consumers that, I'm on this journey of regeneration and I'm at this point, but I want to be able to build X, Y, Z, and that will get me to this point. And I think as a consumer, that now makes me want to go like, well, now I have to buy from you because I want you to get to that point. So it makes me more invested in your farm and in seeing you improve and watching those improvements over years. And I think the thing that we need to do is basically help farmers track that journey and show that improvement. And that comes to sort of what our badge is all about. It's a visual representation of that journey and showing people that it is a journey, and the journey is just as important as the destination.
Yeah. And I think the destination will never get hit because, we're working with nature, which is a massive variable and is dynamic. And I think what you just said there is very important. I want to sit with it for a little bit, is that, in the business world, if a company is hustling and all of a sudden something happens and their stock markets drop, but then they get back up, like it's just a little blimp in the system. But when we come to farming, it might be an organic farmer and something happens and they have to spray, they lose their certification. Or like you were saying before, someone says, oh, I'm going to be a regenerative farmer. So they tick all the little boxes and they say, oh, I'm a regenerative farmer now. But nature doesn't work like that. I think the way that we bounce back and the resilience that we have, and a flood might come through, a fire might come through. Like, is it true that someone should lose their verification or their certification because of a natural disaster, where the way that they bounce back from that and the way that the environment bounces back from that is probably more of a true testament to the way that they're farming and their value alignment? And a lot of these kind of tick and flick, programs are like, you're either in or you're out. There's no kind of journey understanding to go, yes, a fire came through and some of your metrics are no longer, where they need to be, but what's your plan to get back on track, and supporting through that kind of, that dip of despair, as I call it, So I love the fact that you spoke about that, and the fact that, the resilience of a farmer getting back on track and encouraging people to do that rather than throwing up their hands in the air and go, we got flooded, we got fire, we've lost our verifications, well, let's give up. What's the reason to fight through that and improve it, and rewarding people for that?
And that's the thing. Like, I think, going out to so many farms and seeing so many, farmers in so many different environments, producing so many different things. It's like, how would I sit here and ever tell a farmer how to farm? Yeah. Like, it's just, it would make no sense to me. I would rather tell people like what they're doing and have them explain why, because at the end of the day, they know what they're doing. They know what's best for their land. It's their livelihood at stake. So they're not just doing things for the sake of doing them for a negative impact. It's obviously for a positive impact. And I think just leave it in their hands, be transparent about what they're doing, explain why. And again, it just helps to build trust with consumers, because if you're being honest about it, like, again, it just makes me want to support you through that. And if you have to use pesticides or something this year so that you don't have to in the future, or like anything like that happens, look, you know what you're doing. We'll leave it with you,
That's right. When you have that loyal fan base or customers that want to see you win through the ups and the downs, like there's some amazing farms that are running co-ops and, CSA models where you're buying your produce on annually and sharing the yield. When the floods came, there were people saying, don't worry about delivering this year's, like use that as bounce back money. Like the people are foregoing their produce and saying, here's next year's money. Like, we want to see you get back on the ground, back on your feet and be able to provide us for years to come. Like, don't worry about this event that has thrown you around a little bit, and those type of communities is really what we need to see more of, where people work together in times of despair rather than, jumping ship and,
I think that comes down to just, I guess, like, you're a little bit vulnerable in these situations. It is very hard. Like, we definitely, like, losing a fire coming through and destroying half your farm or the whole farm or something like that is devastating. And it's hard to kind of share. And then if you had to use like a pesticide or something that kind of goes against what but like goes against what your customer base might want. Again, it's all understandable. It makes sense. We trust that you know what you're doing. Again, consumers are not the farmers. You can tell them what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then chances are they're just going to be like, well, that makes sense. Like they're not going to question you about it. They just trust you as the expert. So I think, like it's just transparency, openness, being realistic about the situations that are going on. Helps to create better conversations, helps to educate consumers about the real world effect. And it's more interesting.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Can you share a farmer that has partnered with Agri and, what they kind of experience has been like? And, can you share who's on the platform and what they're kind of seeing as a result?
Yeah, so we've had a bunch of different, we really went quite broad quite quickly.
Yes.
So we have, macadamia nut farmers who really work on sort of value adding their product. So they grow their own macadamia nuts and then they put it into a whole bunch of different breads, like butters, cookie, like a whole bunch of different stuff. And then they go sell it at a farmer's market. And for them, that makes so much sense. And they wanted to start to be able to, again, easily sort of tell their story to their customers who are buying their produce, because they're typically selling at a farmer's market. You've got a line. You can't tell everyone your story, nor do you necessarily want to tell your story 50 times every farmer's market. So now she can just say, scan the QR code and it's all there. Amazing. So I think for her, she's, done absolute, been fantastic at it. So Kate's going really well. We're also really excited about, I think wool is one of those things where I find it quite interesting. Most wool farmers don't have any digital presence. I don't even think they would understand why they should have a digital presence.
Yeah.
But I think the consumers of wool are the perfect people. If you can get your story from the farm all the way to that end consumer, the margin's there. There's huge margin in that area. And if you can value align with some of these big companies and they can take your story and you've set it up for them, it's a no-brainer. And I think that's one of the areas that's also really exciting. So we've, basically with our wool farmers, they get these wool tags that go on their wool box at auction. And as the buyers go along, they scan in. They can even message the farmers, which we've had. So they message the farmers directly from the wool box saying that they're interested, or, can we use some of your marketing to who we're going to sell it to? So I think that's really exciting. We've been in some butchers and a bunch of different places. So again, for us, it's just about getting farmers' stories out to wherever their customer base is. And we're happy to do, we love working with farmers to make that possible and to make that happen.
Yeah, love that. I think it's just a great way that it's bridging that gap and creating, making the gap smaller. I think we're definitely, and we're living in a world now where we don't need 400 hops in a supply chain anymore. One day there used to be so many people involved in just one transaction, where now we can skip and go straight to farm gates. And COVID, I think sometimes, supermarkets were closed and farmers were like, can't sell anything. Let's set up a subscription box, or let's do some boxes at the gate and people can come and, collect them. And people realize that they can meet the farmer and they can know where the food's coming from. And that's kind of not slowed down. Co-ops really went crazy and things like that. So what's next for Agri? Is there anything that you can share that's kind of on, the planning board or the ideas board that people can see that's a bit of a feedback from the users so far?
Yeah, so we are really starting to put through some automation. Again, we just want to make it as, the goal is for a farmer to build their own brand today. When you actually look at the steps and get it all the way from basically from nothing to having something that can go on their box or go wherever their produce, it's actually really hard. They have to probably find a website developer to develop a website, or they'll have to learn how to develop a website themselves. They'll probably have to get a certification or two. That's a couple years. And then you have to put all that into a package that then can go towards consumers. And that's actually a really difficult, it can take quite a long time. So we want to really like basically pull that down into minutes. So our process is really working on that and starting to get there, where it's, taking minutes for farmers to build their whole brand and go from one spot to the next.
Well, that's minutes is a very big goal, and I can't wait to see that, because I know, I come from the marketing world and automation, and I love when you can click a button and just the interwebs does its magical things and it gets there. But I think, making it definitely, I call it the slippery slope. Like, it needs to be really easy for someone to say, yep, I want to be part of the platform. And then all the steps after that, if there's long forms and photos of this and that, and like, it's very complicated, it just goes to a later list, and later lists never get done. So I think, got to make it really easy for people to get started at least. Even the basic, 3 points on the profile is better than 0.
Yeah, exactly. So just getting your simple profile startup, maybe getting like a little bit of marketing material and just starting that process. So that's what we've got with like our sort of entry level package. Like, we have a free profile that farmers can just sign up to. It's all your basic information there, because we really want to like for me, it's so important to tell farmers stories and get it to consumers that I would love to have absolutely no barriers and make it as easy as possible, because I think it's just so crucial and so important. And that's kind of the whole point of Agri, is to tell farmers stories, but not on an individual level, which I think is now possible. You can tell farmers individual stories, and there's ways that we can get it out there, where traditionally it's always been, well, let's group together these types of farmers and let's group together these types of farmers, but it just doesn't scale very well. Where when you start to tell individual stories and show why every farm's different, it allows consumers to identify with different farmers and connect with different people. And that really like excites me and gets, then that's what I want to support. And that's what I want to help build and help farmers do, and connect with their customers.
Love that. I think that's awesome. And before we go to the signature question, I'm just very curious, where does the name Agwi come from? What's the meaning behind that? If I may have missed it on the website.
No, you did not miss it on the website. Names are always a tough one. But so in everything that I was doing at university, it was always Agri. And then I just thought agriculture, and so that's the ag part. And then the we part is just we, because it's a whole community of people. It's everyone who's involved in this platform becomes a part of it. And it just felt sort of that's the platform that we were building. It's a community-based agriculture website and platform where people can come to and sort of congregate and learn about agriculture and find the best places to source from.
Amazing. I love that. It's definitely a website where I was zooming around going, oh, I'm learning something as I'm verifying how people, do things, so even someone who's in the space a while was kind of like, oh, that's a, great point. Love the fact that you're talking about this, really was shedding light on more of the type of things that we need to pass through to end, consumers and buyers of the product, so love that. Will, are you ready to become the voice of the soil?
Yeah, I can give it my best go.
Absolutely. So, Will, you have become the soil. You are embodying its energy. You are its mouthpiece. What would you say to the 8 billion people on the planet as the soil?
I'd probably say something like, here I am, listen to me. Everything this is the foundation. So we've got to really look at how this base level works, because that's where everything sort of comes from at the end, and everything will return. Listen to me, here I am, and learn about what's going on down here.
I love the way that you open that up. Here I am, and I'm the foundation. I think definitely is the foundation of a lot of the things we have in our planet today, whether it be the buildings, the produce, the food, the bees, the wildlife, the livestock, everything is kind of derivative of the soil. So
yeah, it's a place that we all sort of came from, and eventually one day we'll all return to. So yeah, it's just I think we need to respect it. We need to learn about it. We love talking about soil.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think our internet has got for a PM hiatus where everyone's coming home from school and we're jiggering around your end, my end. We're having a few technical issues, but we pushed through and we got there at the end. How can the soil lovers hang out with you more and the Agwe brand?
Yeah, so you can definitely find us on Instagram, Facebook, and you can visit our website, agwe.com.au.
Awesome. Well, there you go, soil lovers. Thank you very much, Will. And as always, those links will be around the show notes. So make sure you go and check it out and have a look at the farms that are listed. I had a bundle of joy going around, clicking on all the tabs and learning about the sponge and the no-till and really, really good work. So kudos to you and the team and everyone who's been putting it together.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ryan. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, hopefully speak again soon.
Absolutely will do. Definitely will. And love to get updates of the app. So I'll be following along. Well, there you go, soil lovers. That's another episode for you to sink your teeth in. If any of this tickled your fancy, which I know it did, make sure you pass it on to all your friends, family, relatives, and anyone you can convince to talk about soil with, because that's what we're all about here as soil lovers. Well, until next time, soil lovers, make sure that you get outside, get your hands dirty, and keep digging deeper into the wonderful world of soil. I'm Regen Ray, and I'll catch you on the next show. Well, soil lovers, that's enough secrets for one episode. I really hope that you enjoyed all the secrets shared during this conversation. But hey, let's not keep it a secret. Please share this podcast around and make sure that you like it and leave us a review, because that really helps spread the secrets of the soil. Until next time, remember, get outside, get your hands dirty, and keep digging deeper into your soils.